Alrighty, I think we are live here. Hi, this is Glenn from Thrive After 50. Welcome again, and thank you for spending your Monday night with me. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Thrive After 50 is a website where I promote bold, vibrant, and passionate living, and that's what I wish and hope for all of my viewers and everybody who is running up there in age, as we all are right now. And I want to thank you too. If you find that this is beneficial for you or would be beneficial for anyone that you may know, please go ahead and share it with them. I'd like to build up a following, and I try to come up with messages that I think are pertinent to where we're at, what's going on in life, and particularly from a senior standpoint here. So, and sometimes they're more broad. But anyway, tonight, subject is the isolation crisis, what we can do and what we can do and to help combat it. And the isolation crisis is exactly that, in my opinion. I think whenever we isolate ourselves or think of ourselves or live in the me world as opposed to the us world, we are creating barriers and problems that separate us from the whole here. And we are really today starting to see some real signs of that, of the splintering of our nation here, the economy, the politics, the just, you know, the back and forth, one taking one side and, you know, again, creating barriers and separation as opposed to solidarity and togetherness and growth there. And to me, that is the isolation crisis in a nutshell. And I'll go certainly into it much more depth tonight. I wish I could take credit for everything I'm going to be saying tonight, but I would like to give this fellow, David Brooks, a lot of credit here. He wrote this book called The Second Mountain. And I would encourage you, as the quest for a moral life, that if you're looking for a good book to read, to go ahead and pick this one up. It's really got some fabulous information in it, and a very unique take at looking at things here. So a number of the things I'm going to share tonight comes from that book, as well as other sources of information as well here. So anyway, the pain of isolation, I think we all see it in our seniors and ourselves here, particularly as we grow older in age. We lose some of our friends, you know, they pass away, we move, our spouse may pass away and we find ourselves alone. Again, I think I've mentioned in the past, I live in a retirement village, and I see a lot of this going on, a lot of people who are really struggling with that loneliness, with that separation, looking for a way to reconnect. And unfortunately, a lot of them are not even looking. They're just withdrawing and isolating in their homes and not even getting outside to talk to neighbors or other, reaching out to friends, or, you know, perhaps some of them have church. I think here about 50% of the people go to a church, which I think is a fairly good percentage here, but that still leaves out a lot of people here as far as having some sort of connection. And then that connection is only once a week when it does happen. So that is certainly one of the ways, you know, that is the pain of isolation. We see it in our schools. We see it in kids who may be abused and having a rough home life, coming to school and releasing that anger and fear that out on other children and bullying them in the process. You know, and we've all heard about that. It's saddened, it's sad, but yet, you know, it's not so much the children as the parents as that is the problem there, and that's a whole different ball game there. But that is also part of the problem there. We see it in our human care situations where a lot of us, the older people in particular, or handicapped, are treated as kind of being a nuisance, and this is something that they have to do. And I know my father was in a full care facility there for a while, and he ended up with just such a huge bed sore. It was absolutely incredible. You could see all the way down to his spine, and that's not care. It's just not. It's kind of like we, as we get older and we retire from our careers, in a lot of ways we're put out to pasture, or at least that's the way it may seem. I have a whole different viewpoint on that, as many of you know. I think it's a time to reinvent yourself and start a whole new career with all the time we have. But for a lot of people who have just really geared themselves in their lives toward that day of retirement, that golden day that they have envisioned for so long, where they can stop working, you give up your title, your life changes, and suddenly, you've lost your identity there to a large extent. So we see it in some of the human care situations. We see it in the hospitals, where sometimes the people in there, particularly elders, don't have many visitors coming right now, or they're in there, again, somewhat as a nuisance. I mean, the care in the hospital is generally very good, but they do fill you up with pills. That bill becomes insurmountable. It just becomes huge there. It's just, and I guess what I'm saying is it's a whole lot different from where it used to be in the past here, where you had an issue, you would the family would kind of come together and take care of the person at the home there, and all pitch in. And I know that still happens today to some extent, but there's also a lot of families where, let someone else take care of them. I'm too busy with what I'm doing in order to extend a hand and take care of my mother or father, and that's very unfortunate. So that's the pain of isolation there too. We see it in just so many places. We see it in our racism toward other people, where we may think that our color of race is superior to theirs, or make up different things about what that might mean. It might happen in gender, where so many men may think that they are superior to a woman, or vice versa. That happens as well. It happens in the mentally challenged. There, it happens with the privileged versus the poor, and yeah, maybe someone was really gifted and versed in making a lot of money and very successful at doing that. But that really doesn't make you a better person, in my opinion, than someone who has struggled and didn't have all the opportunities as you may have had. And hey, I wish all of us had enough money and where that wasn't really an issue, because just think of what we could do if we could just move forward in our creativity and helping others there, if that wasn't an issue. But unfortunately it is. But there has to be a way that we can still move together and not think just because I am more successful and have a bigger bankroll than you, that I'm a better person than you in any way there. It happens with rape victims, where, some horrible transgression happens against a female here, and you go to the police or go to the hospital, and there really isn't much done. A lot of people don't trust that what you're saying is real or absolute there, and that's just, wow, that's just so demeaning. It's just takes away from your spirit there when you have something so traumatic happen to you and nobody believes you, what you're saying there. We see it in our politics, and I won't even go down that road as to what's going on with our politics and with the special interest groups, where you're greasing the hand of some people, and others are suffering as a result of that, or the whole isn't taken into consideration as much as the individual. Again, that me versus us sort of thing there, and that's a huge problem that we're having there. And our relentless desire for more. Again, that touches back on the whole money issues there, the haves versus the have-nots. And I think also another one I'm going to put in there as far as the pain of isolation is our integrity and our morals and our values. I don't know how it happened, but for some reason, those have been put on the back burner. They don't seem as predominant or as important today as I believe they should be. And I must say I've been guilty of that in the past, as I imagine we all have somewhere along the way, where we put ourselves first here. But wow, when you talk about our nation as a whole and the leaders of that nation, or even our state or communities or something, you know, the favoritism that goes on, the, you know, take care of me and I'll take care of you, it just, it isn't going to work. It isn't going to, again, it creates that separation, those problems. You know, I remember as a child being with my parents in the city of New York and walking down the street. And there was a man who was on the street bleeding, begging for help. And I was astonished as a child at all the people who just kept walking by and didn't do anything. It was like this person wasn't quite human. It's like this person didn't deserve the attention or the help that any of these people could have given them. And I understand from my parents' perspective a little bit, where they had young children with them and maybe didn't want to subject them to what was going on there, sort of thing. But there were a lot of other people who just kept walking by. And I think situations like that are continuing to get worse and worse, where we just don't even care about others and our neighbors and anyone outside of our own realm of life here. And that's that's a problem. And some of these problems, you know, the way they're manifesting and the consequences of this isolation is one, the suicide epidemic. You know, look at all the people who are taking their lives here. One of the highest groups of suicides are the teenagers, who are just finding it so difficult to adapt and change and, you know, and live in a society or that this doesn't speak to them or they can't identify themselves in. And another age group that is incredibly high in that suicide rate is the elders, you know, the 65 plus age group, and particularly the 75 and up, where, you know, I guess I can understand that to a little greater extent, but still I don't understand giving up on hope and not having someone to support you or someone you can go to for support. I can imagine, you know, how it is to lose a spouse. I've met some of these people and the struggle that they encounter doing this and having to start all over or believing like they've lost all hope and there's nothing left for them. I totally disagree with that, but I can understand where someone may want to take their life. I can also understand it if you're in so much pain and you can't live with that pain anymore that you just want to end your life, you know. So, but still, that's, you know, one of the consequences of that isolation, not having connection with other people there. Another consequence is the mass shootings that we have, where, oh boy, you know, it's, you know, everybody wants to be seen, be heard, feel useful, and feel significant. And a lot of these people have fallen through the cracks where, you know, they haven't experienced love. They haven't had that connection with other people. And it's just a need that we have as a human being to have connection and or be significant. And unfortunately, you know, they let their anger come on, you know, they let the loneliness get to them to such a great extent that they go out and in a very terrible way create that significance that they're looking for, you know, to infamy, from insignificance to infamy. And unfortunately, the consequences of that is not very good. It's terrible, actually. The rising levels of depression and mental health issues in our nation, a lot of us we've been led to believe that a lot of those are chemical imbalances in our brain. But truth be told, and research has shown, a lot of that is due to isolation and loneliness and not having connection and living inside your whole head so much, and with that voice that just beats you up all the time, that you know, you just kind of go crazy, after a while. And, again, particularly after retirement, where you don't have what you feel is meaningful work that you're doing anymore, you're not contributing back. That's a very difficult time. It's a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? Movement into the later stages of life there, senior moment there. And then again, protracted loneliness, where you just basically shut down and you don't even care about going out of the house. I actually see that a lot around here, where leave me alone. I don't want to be contacted. I don't want anyone reaching out to me. I don't want help. That's scary. That's scary stuff there. And there's even services now where, if you reach out and ask them, they'll call and make a call a day. And if you don't answer the phone, then they'll call the other people down the line until they find out that you're home, just, overslept, out of the house and forgot to, check in, but also that comes in handy because someone may die and pass away during the night there. And, I mean, as if that isn't bad enough, if they have pets or something like that, those pets could also end up starving to death over time if they're not discovered within a reasonable time period. So one by one, these forces also sow division, discord, and isolation. We are just isolating ourselves here, and on the other side of that is the nurturing, the attachment, the connection, the solidarity, which is what we're missing out on. I think we're desperately missing out on that. It's like we're witnessing the showdown between social rippers and social weavers. There's so many are destined to just want to rip our society apart and create that division and use their power to do that, as opposed to, the side of love, what I like to call it, where you're coming together, trying to create community, create that connection, create that nurturance, that attachment, and that's part of the problem that we're doing. But the hard part, and I take this from that book there, it's not between one group of good people and another group of bad people. The war runs down the middle of every heart. Every one of us are part of the problem that we complain about, because we all sometimes have a good side to us and sometimes have a bad side to us. And that's something that I think that it's necessary that we keep in mind, that, yeah, this person may have crossed us here right now, or this person may have really angered you, or, for some reason, but we have been on that side of it too, where we have angered someone else because of an action that we have done. And it's important that we step back, take that wider view and look at it. So that I think that's what is meant, that it runs down the middle of every one of our hearts here too. Most of us have bought into this individualistic society, about us. I know I have been guilty of that in my past. We have secluded ourselves. We've done a very good job. You look at the social media here, where, a lot of us have friends via Facebook and Instagram and other means like that, but we don't have that one-on-one touch connection, meeting up with, looking someone in the eyes sort of connection that is so important, I think, to our growth, to our well-being, to our souls. And it kind of leaves us with not much time, for community involvement. We don't really apply ourselves to the community, to the whole, as much as we have to ourselves here. I know I did that for many years. I have, my own little story here. I've lived what I consider to be a very selfish, self-centered life. For much of my life, where, it was myself and my family and trying to do whatever I could. And I was very guilty at times of not caring for someone, a neighbor or someone in need, when I know that just my going over and doing something could have made a big difference. And I always seem to have an excuse and a reason why I wasn't able to or couldn't do that. And it's only been in the last 7, 8 years or so where I have consciously started trying to change that. And it was a slow change, but it's built upon itself. And nowadays, that's just becoming so more greatly important to me that I've involved myself in so many community efforts here where I've moved to in Tennessee that and I've met so many great people that I just enjoy the heck out of it. It's really, really been great. But we see the, as I discussed before, the me, and the politics. A lot of our neighbors already don't want to come out of the house. Our technology, it seems to be everywhere, but yet caring for each other isn't something that is based on social media. It's built on social connection, on that friction, on the interaction, on the agreement and disagreements, and getting to know someone and going into depth with someone. That is what is missing today in today's society so much. Let's see. Mental well-being is now the job of the therapist. It's not a family thing. It's, sometimes people still go to their church ministers or pastors or something like that for some help or so, but you've got a problem, go to the therapist. Go get your help here. Don't leave me alone. Physical health is now the job of the hospital. You've got a problem, you go to the hospital. They'll take care of you. Again, it's not like you're taken care of at home right now. Education, the job of the school system. So many families don't participate in educating their children. They just rely on the schools to do that. And unfortunately, the children still get educated from the standpoint of not getting educated from the home. And again, that can really lead to some negative consequences for those children, because those habits, those patterns that they grow up with become such a part of their core, their nature, who they are there. And they carry on onto the next generation here. I remember going through therapy one time, and the coaches said that, if you can just raise that shade up a little bit in your generation, you're doing a good job. And just, if you can, and just trying to raise that shade, let in the light a little bit more, you're doing a good job. But we've got so much history that we bring along with us. So how is community restored? How do we go about making a difference, bringing people back, creating loyalty to others and stuff? Well, it comes down to putting community over ourselves here. And that's a very difficult thing to do. We've got to step into it. You got to do it one person at a time, one door at a time, one neighbor at a time. It's a slow process there, but once we do it and we start putting our neighbors' needs and desires and the community's needs and desires, or participate in contributing to those, that starts the change there. The next stage, it says, of community building is understanding that you need to fix the neighborhood as a whole. Okay, it's not just you, it's not just your neighbor you're fixing. You're trying to work together in the whole community and rebuild it and create that trust. Because what is happening is that so many of us are not trusting one another. We don't trust the news. We don't trust our politicians. We don't trust the person walking the street. We don't, some of us are afraid to go outside. Some of us are afraid to travel to other countries. Some of us are afraid just do so much because we fear what might happen. We have so much of that ingrained upon us. But we got to start with our neighborhoods there and start building back up that trust and that relationships and that community where, yeah, there is someone that you can count on that can be in your corner and help you in times of need here. So it's important for our communities to have like a collective story, doing things for people to help them, to checking in with people, how they're doing mentally, physically, spiritually. And for some people, particularly elders that I see here, just that touching base with them is so important. It can really make them feel like someone cares about them, or they have a friend out there when, you know, in their own heads, they don't. They're totally alone and isolated. And that particularly happens as people get older. Now, it's really important also to go deep, as I touched upon earlier, with people there, to share your vulnerability, to share who you are, I know for me, being vulnerable is something I enjoy doing because it's kind of like taking off a layer off of the onion each time. The more I can tell my story, the less of a hold it has on me. And I've discovered that to be so true for me over the long term here. Yet there's so many people, and it was tough for me to come out of that as well, where you've got these secrets, you don't want to share them, you don't want people to think less of you, like you're not good enough or strong enough or something like that. And I think that's the importance of vulnerability, because when you can share your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, particularly if you're a strong person, that's going to encourage other people to do the same thing. And that creates that bonding, that going deep, that getting to know someone, that creating that trust, you know, showing up, you know, shared vulnerability arouses other people there to share themselves as well here. So that's really, really important there. Alrighty, let's see. We're going to wrap it up here pretty soon. And a commitment to community involves moving from I stories to we stories. Again, as a community, what defines our community? There's been some long established communities where they do have a story that they share. It might be from other past generations, ancestors or so, but we're still building on that all the time. We're trying to create a we. We're trying to create street fairs. We're trying to create circles of friendships or activities where people can get to know each other. You know, on such and such day or every week at this time of year, we have this street fair or art fair going on. Is trying to create that community, that thickness, that bond, that depth here that is so important here. So I think what's important is to know is that, yes, we're all on solitary journeys, but I think it's important that we step outside of that, because a solitary journey, from my experience and in my readings, doesn't lead to a fulfilled life. It doesn't lead to a joyful life. I have discovered that the joy of life is reaching out and helping others. That has given me great joy within more than any material thing, any trip I've been on, anything else I could do. That has been more fulfilling for me than anything else. And I encourage you to do the same, to start reaching out to your neighbors, to reach out to others, to risk being that person, risk being that light of the neighborhood, of where you live, and start extending yourself out to those people who you may have overlooked in the past, whether it be that person in the street or that neighbor that's got a reputation for, you know, stay off my grass, or that person who is handicapped that, you know, you've always shied away from. It's all part, because everybody has a gift. Everybody has a gift here. And it's important that we share our gifts, that we try to bring out those gifts of everyone that we see. And that's the only way I believe that we're going to solve this isolation crisis. It's got to start with us. It's got to start with the we stepping out of our safety zones, our comfort zones, and extending ourselves out. So that's my message to you today. And as usual, I always have a quote at the end here. And I'll read this one. This, a person is a person through other persons. You can't be human in isolation. You are human only in relationships. And that's from Desmond Tutu, the human's rights activist and theologian. And I'll read that one more time. A person is a person through other persons. You can't be human in isolation. You are human only in relationships. And that's what I believe too. So anyway, Glenn from Thrive After 50, wishing you only the best. I hope to see you next Monday. Again, if you find anything here that you think someone else might benefit from, please go ahead and share. And in the meantime, get out there and be the light in your neighborhood. All right. Take care. So, bye-bye.